When we raised $12.7 million, we brought in some key shareholders, some shareholders that were already in the previous placement, in Rob McEwen, Eric Sprott. We had Crescat Capital, Quinton Henney come in, Earth Labs, which is a fund out of Toronto, and then a commodity fund out of Singapore. So we had some very, very strong support in this previous financing.
Kirkland Lake Discoveries has a 400 square kilometer exploration portfolio in the Kirkland Lake region of Ontario's Abitibi Greenstone Belt. CEO Stefan Sklepowicz is here to review the project and the ongoing 25,000 fully funded meter drill program. Please remember, this is neither a recommendation nor investment advice. We're here to learn about the company. I'm Martin Gago with Market Radius Research. Stefan, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Martin. I'm so happy to be here.
You've got your deck ready to go here. Why don't you walk us through it, and then we can take it from there.
Sounds good. Okay, so I will be making some forward-looking statements with this. I will try to keep everything on the straight and narrow, but there's always a chance that I will be making some forward-looking statements. Basically, what we're set up to be is the next billion-dollar exploration company. So we're following a billion-dollar blueprint, much like companies like Great Bear Resources, Newfound Gold, and they all had the same steps. Basically, take proven geology, district scale, being well capitalized, aggressive drill programs, and market awareness. And basically, what I'm going to walk through with this presentation is how we're set up for this huge opportunity gap, currently trading around a $45 million market cap, $50 million market cap, and how we're on pace to unlock this kind of value. And so those are the things I'm going to go through today. Basically, as you said, Martin, we're within the Abitibi Greenstone Belt, which is outlined in this gray area, but we're specifically working within this Blake River group of rocks, which you see in gold here. Now, the reason why the Blake River group of rocks is important is that on the Quebec side of the border, they've been incredibly well endowed. So this large volcanic belt is everything you see in green here, and this line down the middle is the Quebec-Ontario border. On the Quebec side, there's all these different mines. Everything with an X is a VMS type of deposit, whereas the gold squares are gold deposits. There's only been one found on the Ontario side of the border, and that's the Upper Beaver. And the reason for that is this has been underexplored. There's been less work done by the Ontario Geological Survey. You know, the Quebec side is a 1 to 50,000 ratio. It's very clear. You can see a lot of details. That doesn't stop at this border. And so we basically accumulated this land package over the last 15 years, piece by piece by piece, and built it up into, like you said, over that 400,000 square kilometers. 400 kilometers squared. Mines that are on the Quebec side that are of note are, the Horn Mine, La Ronde. These are huge elephant deposits. They are massive. 6.1 grams per ton, 53 million tons with a 2.2% copper kicker at Horn. That's what we're looking for on our side of the border. When we look at the overall land package, where everything you see here in gold, our project is split into three parts. We have KL West, KL East, and KL South. I mentioned before the Upper Beaver, that's moving into production by Agnico Eagle. They have another mine, Macassa, which is just 5 kilometers from our border. That's a high-grade gold hosted in syenite, based off of the Larder Lake Cadillac Break, which is down here. It's one of the shears coming off of it. Those shears continue onto our property and often will host high-grade mineralization. Upper Beaver is a copper-gold intrusive-related mineralized system. Agnico is moving that into production. It will be pulling ore by 2027, full production by 2031. Some other major neighbors in the area with Pan American Silver, Eldorado Gold, and it's a area that's been well worked. It's a brownfields camp, and so there's a lot of infrastructure, mills, and no shortage of mines. On our property, we have evidence of high-grade mineralization, 17 grams over 12 meters for gold, up to 561 grams per ton over a half meter. We also have high-grade copper, silver, zinc, all within the property. So there's evidence that there's a lot of smoke. The idea is now with our exploration project is to find where these are in economic grades. One way that we set out to do this is with a regional exploration program. And so we focused in 2024 on doing soil geochemistry across the entire property. And what we noticed was that around this intrusion, this pink blob, and if you think of an intrusion as a magmatic event where you have mountains or a building event where you have fluids and magma coming up, an intrusion didn't quite make it to surface. And so this ball of magma basically sat there and circulated for millions of years. And with that, it draws in a lot of fluids. What we found interesting was that the clusters of mineralization are all around the borders of this intrusion. And so that was one of the first things that we noticed with this regional exploration. And then secondly, we did our regional geophysics and we noticed that we also had alignment of this magnetic destruction around the edges of this intrusion. And so that's where we see these magnetic highs linked with the magnetic lows. Once we started looking more closely at this property or around this intrusion, we found a drill hole from 1989 where they hit 2.6% copper, 2.8% zinc, silver, and gold over 22.5 meters. So we set out and we optioned this property back in May of last year and got to work on it to see if this was more of an intrusion-related system coming from this pluton rather than how they had explored it in the past, which was as a BMS. And so the team got to work in May of last year. We did a full summer field program where we did channel sampling, we did prospecting, we did mapping, and there were some key things that came out of that drew a lot of interest from the surrounding neighbors and from the geological community in general. One of the biggest things was this massive bismuth hit that we had in one of the grab samples where we had over 1,200 ppm. The reason why that's important is that when you have these intrusive-based systems, if they're running for a very long period of time, they'll often pull in minerals from the surrounding area. And so elevated bismuth, elevated tellurium, elevated molybdenum tell us that we're in the right area for an intrusion-based system. We also had high-grade copper and zinc at surface with elevated tellurium, gold, and silver. All of these things are pointing in the right direction. So we set out for drill testing this, and all the drilling in the past had been to the east here, closer or away from the intrusion. And in these 4 holes, we hit massive sulfides with a semi-massive shoulder into disseminated sulfides, indicating that there was a lot of hydrothermal fluids that went through that area and remobilized existing mineralization that was in those Blake River group of rocks. One of the other things that we found, so within the intrusion, we made a gold discovery, as well as 2 kilometers to the northeast, another gold and critical minerals discovery. So some really good indications that this system, again, was long-lived and pulled in a lot of extra mineralization from those surrounding rocks. In those drill holes, we had some significant hits with 31 meters of 1.22% copper equivalent from 14.62 meters, so basically at surface. And all 4 of those holes hit similar grade, which is really exciting. From that, we were able to raise $12.7 million and have commenced a 25,000 meter drill program, which commenced in November of 2025. That is focused around this intrusion. And so the idea is following up on these geophysical and geochemical targets that are around this intrusion. And so we've focused primarily up to this point in time, 9 Mile, Wolverine Bend, and Winnie West. We've also just started getting into this area here, which we're calling Hammerhead. And we have a couple of tests here at Crossroads, which are testing those geological, geochemistry, and geophysical features. So the idea is let's figure out how many of these areas are well mineralized. And so the only assays that we've gotten back up to this point in time are from Wolverine Bend. And what got us really excited there was that this mineralization is something we haven't seen up to this point in time. So you have a altered syenite, which is incredibly well endowed in the Kirkland Lake camp quite regularly. It acts almost as a sponge for mineralization. And so seeing that we have this mineralization where we have this high alteration signature is really exciting, because this can lead to much larger deposits, not necessarily where you're chasing down narrow quartz veins, but more so a pervasive mineralizing event. And so since we put this hole out back in early January or mid-January, we followed up with holes beneath this to see what that mineralization looks like, and have been encouraged with the results that we've seen up to this point in time. The other thing that happened was in December, we brought in the Mirado property. So this is part of our KL South area. Now, there's a couple of things with Mirado. One thing is that it's a historic resource, which is exciting. Bringing in 442,000 ounces helps to solidify the market cap. And it also gives a little bit of security from an exploration standpoint, in that we can focus on an existing resource and drill that out. But the opportunity that we saw was that this has been highly overlooked from a regional standpoint. Almost all of the exploration has been surrounding the Mirado mine, but there's a lot of high-grade grab samples at surface, channel sampling, that indicate there could be potential of these shears that go between this McElroy and Catherine fault. And these cross-cutting shears are holding mineralization. Where we see that is at Mirado, and this is a basically east-west looking along one of those shears. And this section you see in the background is an IP resistivity. And what you'll notice here is that almost all of the drilling that had been done here, the 50,000 meters, has been above 250 meters. When you're looking at the mines in Kirkland Lake, like Macassa and Upper Beaver, they're kilometers deep. And what got us excited is when we were looking at this, there's a IP anomaly directly underneath that resource. And so this hasn't been tested below 250 meters. And then along strike, we see that same resistivity anomaly on either side. And so lots of opportunity for expanding this resource along the strikes as well as at depth. And the other thing is this resource was done in 2013, $1,300 gold. The cutoff was at 0.45. And so we expect with this open pit style of mineralization, we'd be able to lower that cutoff grade, increase the resource just from sliding the bar across to that lower cutoff value. So those are the big things that we're excited about. When this transaction closes with Mirado, we're just waiting for the exchange approval, which should be happening any day now. We'll be moving one of our drills down here to further test this, as we see this as a really big opportunity for our drilling. So just to summarize, we're in the midst of a 25,000 meter drill program. So far, we're at 11,000 meters. We just crossed that number yesterday, which is really exciting. Only 1,000 meters of that have returned from assays. We're still waiting on the labs. There's a lot of people who are drilling right now. And so we'll continue to be putting out news over the next 6 months as those results come back and as we work through the remainder of that drill program. To summarize our capital structure, we're now sitting closer to about $10 to $11 million with the drilling that we've done up to this point in time. And after the Mirado transaction closes, this will be closer to 200 million shares outstanding. But in our last raise, when we raised $12.7 million, we brought in some key shareholders, some shareholders that were already in the previous placement, in Rob McEwen, Eric Sprott. We had Crescat Capital, Quinton Henney come in, Earth Labs, which is a fund out of Toronto, and then a commodity fund out of Singapore. So we had some very, very strong support in this previous financing. Our exploration team is led by Ben Cleland. He came in November when we knew we were going to be expanding this drill program. We wanted somebody with experience, with that passion for discovery, somebody who really focused on the big picture, and that's where Ben came in. He worked at Vior, Greenstone Gold Mine, so a lot of experience within the Abitibi, has a lot of experience working with large drill programs, so he's the perfect fit for leading this. And then we have Mike Kilburn and Drake Hayden, who are our senior geologists. They're the guys that are at the drills every day. Mike has 40 plus years of experience, has logged over 200,000 meters of diamond drilling in Archean belts. He's worked at a lot of the mines in the area. And so when he sees rocks, he can quickly link them to existing mineralization and know what styles we're dealing with. Whereas Drake Hyden's the guy that's taking those things, putting them into a digital format for us to be able to utilize in an effective way. And so he's great at getting things into Leapfrog, QGIS, in a digital format that we can actually utilize. One thing that we do a little bit differently that I'm a big fan of is transparency. I've been an investor in the junior space for 20 plus years. And for me, it was always frustrating not knowing what was going on with companies. You get a press release 6 months later, you get a press release, and a lot has changed in that time. And so what we do is every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we put out an episode talking about what's going on, what we're excited about, showing the core coming out of the drill. We strap GoPros to the guys when they're in the bush peeling back moss. So you get to see things as they're happening. We really focus on the education of the investor so they understand exactly what we're dealing with and ensure that you know where your dollars are being spent as an investor in the story. And so this is something that I encourage you to check out. It's a lot of fun. The board of directors, we have Denis Laviolette leading the board. He started Newfound Gold as a startup, brought it up to $1.5 billion. When they moved towards production, that was when Denis left. He's more of an explorationist at heart. And so that's where he comes as a huge value add for our company. Gary Nassif, Christina McCarthy, Vincent Dubois are all involved with companies of building them up, selling them off, which is kind of the end goal of what we're looking to do with this company. And so they bring a wealth of experience as well as connections for capital to allow us to do those things. And so that kind of summarizes everything, but this is how we're executing the blueprint. We're in the best location in the world in the Abitibi Greenstone Belt. We're exploring rocks that have been overlooked for years, and we see a huge opportunity there. We're in the midst of an aggressive drill program with 25,000 meters, which will take us through to June of 2026 with 2 rigs operating during that time. We're well capitalized, and we're poised for exponential growth. And so that's us in a nutshell.
Stefan, thank you.
No problem.
With the drill program right now, with the 25,000 meters, can you, at this point, how are they allocated generally between the different projects?
Sure. Let me just zoom up to our map. That might be the best way to show it. So in this area, this is where the majority of our drilling is focused, is around this intrusion. And that was what we set
around the 9 mile? Is that
basically
or this whole map?
This whole
the
map.
9 mile Wolverine and Winnie West.
Correct. Yeah. And so basically what we're doing is we're testing each of these areas. And the average hole is set up to be between 200 and 300 meters. And we let those holes run longer if we're liking what we're seeing. And if there's not the mineralization that we're expecting, or we're not getting the answers to those drill programs, then we will cut them at that 200 to 300 meters. And so basically each of these areas where you're seeing the mineralization at surface in the geochem sampling, which is these purple, oranges, and greens, that's where we're focusing on. Since we've made that great discovery at Wolverine Bend, more meters have been allocated to this area. So there's almost a dedicated drill in this area as we're tracing that syenite mineralization, testing across this break towards the Amakugami, which is a north-south structure that goes all the way down to Macassa in Kirkland Lake. And we see all of these gold showings in this area. And so we're working our way across, seeing this magnetic low that dips down into this fault. And you see the break here, and then it goes very deep here and then across. And so that's an area where we're spending quite a bit of our drilling. And then Winnie West, basically tracing that mineralization of that known drilling that we hit with the massive sulfides. It's basically figuring that system out and where that's coming from. And so we've spent quite a bit of time at Winnie, at Wolverine Bend, and then some regional test holes around this area. As I said, when the Mirado transaction closes, we'll maintain the drills at Wolverine and Winnie West, and then we'll move one of the drills down to Mirado to test that area. And so we expect that'll be between 5 and 7,000 meters. We'll go down to Mirado.
How much of your drill program is sort of planned? It's obvious drill programs are always iterative. You get some information and then you tweak it and so forth. But do you have at this point all 25,000 meters allocated, or maybe like you've drilled 11 already, maybe 16, and then you're waiting for the data to come in before you allocate the remainder 10,000 or whatever it is?
Yeah, it's always ongoing, Martin. Exactly like you said, in that we get information and then make a decision based off of that. So we put a couple of holes down into this southern area, which didn't come back the way that we had expected. And so we had 3 or 4 holes planned there, and we ended up scrapping those and moving them more north into that break. And so we always have about 5,000 meters planned and then adjust as those results come in. And with the assays taking as long as they are, it's slowing down that piece of it. The
Yeah.
nice thing at Wolverine is that it's very distinct what this looks like. So this highly altered, these 2 rocks are the same, right? So this one up here and this one down here, those are the same rocks, but these have been altered and changed. And then with that alteration, mineralization has gone into it. And so the more alteration we see, that intense alteration is aligning nicely with mineralization. And so we're at least getting that visual clue with the drilling at Wolverine. At Winnie Lake, we're seeing, sulfides, massive sulfides, disseminated sulfides, which are a lot easier to indicate mineralization as well. And so those ones we're able to target based off of what we're seeing. Whereas in the newer areas, we're still waiting for the assays to be able to follow up with drilling on those ones based off of what's running.
You have a very large land package of 400 square kilometers. The map you were showing looks like a small portion of that. Is part of your, let's say, program this year, I guess, what are the holding costs to that land, and how aggressively are you planning on parsing up, sort of cutting off the unproductive or the less interesting land so you can have more focus?
So, very good question. And that's one of my concerns always with large land packages and maintaining it. What you'll notice is that we have this
Sorry
very.
to interrupt here. Just on that map, I was trying to find a scale, like from left to right, from KL West to the right of KL East. About how many kilometers is that?
That's 53 in total from
Okay.
this area to this area. So it is connected via a bridge up here, Martin.
Yeah.
What that allows us to do is if I spend $1 million here, I can distribute it across the entire property. And
Yes.
so the as much as we love what we see at KL East, it's currently not our primary focus. There's definitely known mineralization on this side of the property. There's lots of hints of other things going on, but this area to the north is covered in till. Till is a little bit different than soils. It involves a deeper methodology. You have to dig down sometimes up to a meter, 2 meters, depending on the coverage, to be able to get a true sample. Whereas with the soils, it's more of a veneer that's over top of the bedrock, and that was why we were able to do such an extensive program on KL West. To do the same thing on KL East will be quite expensive, and so it's something that's in our plans, but it's on the back burner at this point in time. So we're able to keep this in good standing through the work that we're doing over here quite easily,
Yeah.
in that we already have a bank of about 7 years of credits. Ontario is one of the best places to work from that regard, in that you can distribute those credits, you can bank them when you're not using them. And as long as the land is contiguous, it's easy to distribute those credits across the entire area.
So there are no holding costs per se. It's a matter of making sure the land you have is being actively worked and that you're putting money into the ground.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. And you clearly are.
We are.
Can you tell us a little more about on the Mirado project, the history of that and sort of the circumstances for you guys getting it? And I don't know, maybe what do you think the potential target size of that resource could be? Like,
Sure. Let me just zoom down there. So, Mirado, the actual Mirado mine was being mined in the 40s. In World War II, once there was a restriction on steel and explosives, that mine shut down. And so this area is called Boston Creek. It is a very well endowed area. You can see that there's multiple mines in the area, but the majority of them all shut down in the 40s. So 1942, 1943, and they basically died off during that time. And so there was some intermittent exploration that was done over the years, piece by piece, but on the Mirado property, total of only 50,000 meters. And most of it was focused at the Mirado mine. And so it hasn't been explored with a modern geophysics or a modern exploration approach, looking at this as a shear hosted between these faults. And so for us, we saw just the opportunity from that regard. The reason we were able to get it was that Stephen Stewart is a shareholder of Kirkland Lake Discoveries. He wanted to get a bigger chunk of that company with the blue sky potential that we have on the exploration portfolio to the north. And so they had the Mirado property in their portfolio at ORCAP that wasn't being valued. And so by having a win-win situation in that, they became a 19.9% shareholder, and we got this brownfields exploration project, which basically reduces the risk associated with KLDC. That was why we were able to come to that. And he sees our exploration team, our management team, as a good bet. And so he was willing to trust us with this exploration and with the resource that's existing here. And so ORCAP gets a realization of this property through their holdings with us. And then in turn, we get that great resource as a starting point where we think we'll be able to grow this significantly. What that number is, Martin, I don't want to pigeonhole it at this point in time. It's, the drilling has all been done in this one area. So the majority of it is here. There's a fault or a folding that goes through this area where the mineralization seems to be attached to. That goes right through the entire property. So just in this area, we were able to lower that cutoff grade to grow the resource significantly. The fact that we have these incredible showings at surface that are untested. You see there's no drill holes over here. There's none over here. And they have the exact same resistivity in induced polarity. So basically they would put poles at either end, run the circuit through, and that's what's showing. And so I don't want to give you a number because it's a shot in the dark at this point in time, but with this high grade chute that we see running down this way, there's some incredible drill intercepts, in the 500, 600, 700 grams per ton plus. And so if we can trace that out and it continues to depth, then the sky's the limit of what this resource could actually be.
At depth down the chute plunge, would that be an extension of the existing mineralization, or are you expecting to have some sort of a different system below it?
No, we think this is the same system. Based off of the 3D model that we were able to put together, you see kind of these stacked veins going down along that plunge. And that's where we expect that it's going to continue. There's kind of two styles of mineralization. You have a disseminated lower grade halo, and then you have these high grade chutes that are going along with it. So what we expect is that high grade is going to continue down that plunge, and then there's still room for growth from that bulk tonnage standpoint with the disseminated sulfides, pyrite, et cetera, around that are hosting gold as well.
Going deeper, or uh, to the sides of the resource, what would be good, like a solid like results you'd be looking for, and what would kind of make it look, what would be a home run kind of a drill result in there?
Um, the best way, so if you, this is where I'll say do a little bit of research, take some time, go back to 2013 when this was being drilled by Ore Finders at the time was the name of the company. They changed their name to OreCap, but there's some significant intercepts that they hit with their drilling. But we're talking, 30, 40, 50 meters of mineralization, anywhere from a gram per ton, like I said, up to 500 grams per ton in shorter intervals. So we're expecting to get some significant intercepts here. Again, I'm not going to put numbers to it because
Yeah,
until I put a drill hole in there and see exactly what we're dealing with,
yeah,
that's all I can base it off of is the historic work that's been done. But the grades that you're seeing at surface here are a very good indication of what we hope to find. Are these going to be over 100 meters? No. But what we'll see is these over 3, 4 meters, and then a much wider disseminated halo around that. So we will get, tens of meters of mineralization here with confidence. What that grade's going to look like is what we're excited about. We hope
yeah.
that we're going to get some of these ones where they're much bigger in those high grade shoots that we're seeing. But at the same time, we can already see that this is well mineralized. The numbers are all here, so everything in yellow is 0.3 to 1. So you can see that there's a lot of yellow in this area. If I were, obviously this isn't the most high resolution, but there's
Yeah.
a lot of high grade, which is above 10 grams per ton, that are kind of in these shoots throughout this area. And so the idea is follow up on some of the known mineralization, prove that it's there, and then test the downwards extents of it once we get a really good understanding of the geometry of it.
Do you have core from those original drill programs, or just the assay results?
There is some core. We don't have all of the historic core, but any of the stuff that was drilled by ore finders back in 2013, we have access to. It's being stored at a core yard in just outside Kirkland Lake and Larder Lake. So we do have access to some of that core, about I think 20,000 meters. So we'll be able to move it from historic into 43-101 compliant by reassaying some of that core as well.
Is that a short term, or let's say a 2026 goal, is to refresh that resource estimate, or do you just want to focus on drilling and finding out as much about the project as possible before trying to put a pin in it with a new resource estimate?
My thought process on resources is you put out a resource when you have edges. So
Yeah.
once you have defined the geometry of the resource, the shape of it, and you have extents, whether that be east, west, or to depth, and there's cutoffs on it where you can say, yeah, I can stop. That's when I would be looking to do a resource. That's not going to happen in 2026. I have no thought of upgrading this resource at that time. Right now, we're more focused on how big is this, and not to put a pin in it too early. In that, yes, there's an existing resource of 442,000, but it's all above 250 meters. This is all shallow drilling up to this point in time. And again,
Yeah.
not a lot along the extents. And so for me to spend the time and the money to put out that resource, it doesn't really make sense for us when there's so much open opportunity. I'd rather drill this thing out and try to find those edges of it so that we can define what we'd actually be working with here.
Okay, good. That's my sort of litmus test. I don't. It doesn't make sense to me when people put out resource estimates before they figured out the edges of it and that.
It's
So that makes
it's
me
it's
very
a
happy.
it's a different time. That used to be a thing
Yeah,
where if you had a million ounce resource, you could stick a pin in it and you'd always be able to mine that. We
yeah,
want to have something that's going to have a much larger mine life, and this
yeah.
property has so many exploration targets that haven't
Yeah.
been tested, it doesn't make sense to me to stick a pin in it.
Yeah, I fully agree there. A question from the audience: what plans do you have for a proper U.S. listing, at least an OTC QB listing?
In progress.
All right.
So I let's say if by May we are not fully upgraded to that listing, I would be very disappointed. But we should. It's already in progress, so that's all I can say.
Yeah. With the assay results, things are busy at the labs and backed up. Um, what is your strategy going to be for releasing that? As well as, do you have any sense of the time you're going to try to put out some results every month? And are you going to try to batch coherent ones together so the set sort of, you can paint a bit of a picture with that? Tell us about the timing and the content strategy for your releasing the assays.
Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly what the plan is. We won't put out singular holes. Basically, we have, two or three holes going into test each of these areas at a time. And so once we receive all of the assays back from one of those areas where we can paint a picture of what we're seeing, what type of mineralization is attached to it, what that looks like, then we put out a release from that standpoint. That will be as they come in. The assays going to the lab are going out every week. So if they get into the queue and we expect this 8-week turnaround that we're currently waiting on, which is I can't tell you how frustrating it is, but
Yeah.
it's a nature of a bull market in that there's a lot of companies that are putting drill core into the labs right now. Um, so as it comes back, what we should see is that once we start following into that pattern, that we should get the results back consistently every week. And then in turn, it's every 2 to 3 weeks that we're hoping to put out results. And so there should be consistent news flow from that regard. With
Yeah.
Mirado being a kind of a new spot, we are exploring alternative labs, Paragon being one of them that has guaranteed, and I hate using that because every lab will guarantee whatever they want to get your business and then
Yeah.
never seem to follow up from that regard. But they've guaranteed a 10-day turnaround for gold assay specifically.
Yeah.
And so we are exploring using them for Mirado specifically. But there is a polymetallic aspect to it. So we may not get all of those results back in that 10-day, but we would at least be able to get the gold results to know if we're on the right target from that regard, and then get the polymetallic and the all the pathfinder minerals, etc., from the further assays with the 4 acid digest.
Yeah, I met with Paragon a while back. Interesting technology they're using there, and that's great if you can get such fast turnaround. At least, yeah, you're not driving blind, so to speak.
Exactly.
All right. We've covered a lot here. This is the main news flow over the next, so it's going to take it roughly another 6, 7 months, I guess, maybe till the end of the summer to get all the data back. And then once you've accumulated the data, then there'll be a period of time where you're going to try to digest it and put together a cohesive picture from what you've learned. Would that then be, I don't know, released maybe very late summer or early fall? Am I getting kind of ballpark timing fairly right
Yeah,
here?
I think that's going to kind of be ongoing, Martin, as the story is developing and as things are making more sense and the pieces are falling into place. We have no problem talking about it. We don't expect to have the perfect picture, but what we'll disclose is the details of what we're seeing at that time.
Yeah.
And as it grows, so will the understanding of what we're seeing. And so it will be ongoing. With this, we expect to have some significant intercepts, which then in turn will look at a re-rating for the stock. I don't want to stop drilling though. So it's one of those things where when we're at a point that it makes sense, we would bring more capital into the story to drill out further, because it's one of those things. Once we start here, it's a lot easier just to keep going. We have
Right.
a really big team. We have a strong team and the infrastructure to be able to handle it. And so for me, rather than starting and stopping, it would be something where we would look at a raise closer to the that June marker with a increased market cap, that we bring in more capital to be able to continue drilling, to continue moving this forward,
Yeah.
because we think that we're onto multiple big things at KL West, and then also at Mirado. And so more capital is going to be needed to be able to really drill this thing out to the point where we can have a transaction or a decision that we would move towards production. And so for me, it's a let's just keep going with it, and we would explore that at that time. But that's going to be highly dependent on what we receive back from the drill. But so far, we've already made one discovery. The fact that it's an altered syenite at Wolverine Bend is a very big deal, especially in this camp. They've been host to some of the largest deposits. And so more drilling there will tell us the size of this, the depth extent. But like I said, we're really happy with what we've been seeing up to this point in time.
That seems to be a good spot to close things off here. And you've done a nice wrap up at the end. But any final words here before we call it a day?
No, not really. Like it's you know the fact that we're in the midst of a 25,000 meter drill program. We're only 11,000 meters in, and we only have 1,000 meters back from the labs, and those first holes hit mineralization. It's to me is what more to come.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of news flow, a lot of exciting times. We're one of the best companies for disclosure in that you'll see everything that's going on through our YouTube channel. And so you can follow along, even if it's not necessarily material. We'll often just talk about the rocks and what we're seeing. And so it helps to build that story and an understanding of what we're working with. And that's where we do things quite differently from a lot of companies out there. And so it's fun to follow along with this. And like I said, there's going to be a lot of news flow with a lot of areas that have never been tested before.
Yeah.
And so we have high expectations of what this project is going to kick out over the next 6 months.
All right. Are you going to PDAC and doing that whole thing?
Yes, our whole team, well, most of our team will be there. We have one set of like a senior geologist and core loggers, et cetera, that are staying to continue the program. But we'll have a booth there. I'm doing one-on-one meetings with Ben, but Ryan, our corporate development guy, and Drake will be at the booth for the majority of it, and then we'll be doing meetings for the rest of the time. So it's going to be a very busy show.
All right. Excellent. Stefan, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Martin. Thanks for hosting this.
Sure.